I mean, how many times have you been to this market this year?
Wow.
With me or with?
I think I went once.
Yeah,
I have
not. Emailed me too.
Mike's picked up. Are we live yet, Jeff? We're live?
We are live, ladies and gentlemen. I've got 3:29. I don't have anything electronic. Yeah, I do.
3:30.
Is it 3:30? It's 3:30. On Monday, February 8th, 2021, I call this meeting of the Conway City Council to order. It is a specific meeting, a budget workshop. We like to begin our meetings with an invocation. If you'll join me, please. Dear God, we welcome your presence and your guidance as we begin the talks for the next year's budget for the city of Conway. We ask that you be with us and keep us in the frame of mind that makes us others oriented. These things we ask in your name. Amen. And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. First item on the agenda, on this workshop agenda, is a discussion on paper roads. I'm not sure who is going to lead that discussion. All right, Ms. Mary Catherine Hyman.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And I know this was an issue that we discussed at the last meeting, and we just wanted to, I know Council maybe had some questions on it. So what I've done, I included an issue paper that described what a paper road is. Basically, it got its name because it exists on paper only. It doesn't exist in the real world. When the parcels were subdivided, and it varies, this was the one we were talking about last time. This is Alpha Lane, but it has several other examples also. In this case, it is shown as a right-of-way. It's shown as a road on the GIS maps, on plats, if you look back, but it was never actually built. That wouldn't happen today. If it was platted out, it would be built, but some of these older, especially residential areas, we see this quite a bit. This is one example. Like I said before, this is Apple Lane.
While you're changing that, does that mean that, who owns then that property that's within the lines that we consider a paper road?
It's a right-of-way.
So it belongs to the city?
Right.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily. It belongs to no one.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a platted right of way, but who owns it is not clear. If the developer had built the road, they would have had to dedicate that to the city when it was built, and then we would have had ownership of it. But more than likely, a number of these were platted out to get access to interior lots that were never built. That's
yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
Okay, so right away for whom?
access to lots that are interior.
Okay. Mr. Hubbard?
Okay, now my understanding, Mary Catherine, is because there's paper roads behind my house.
There are, and I've got an example of them.
And the lot behind me, you can't get title insurance on it because the paper roads belong to the original developer. The original developer is in the graveyard somewhere. And so it's,
They're a title nightmare, a lot of
Yes, yeah. The only way to, we've tried to clear them up before, is a quiet title action. And there's technically a paper right away behind my house with the railroad. The railroad has abandoned it. And there is some case law about an abandoned right away or abandoned easement, but it's a nightmare to try to clear up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this is the one behind your house, Shane. And this area actually has a couple of different issues. The red shows the paper roads in your area. We've got Bill Mack Boulevard as a paper road, and also Long Street. But then there's also what we call unapproved roads in your area. You've got Bench Street and Clayton Street, which are they're roads, but they don't meet city standards. They're dirt or gravel. So the way our ordinance is written, when a new home is built, it has to be on a paved road. So, per our ordinance, a new home couldn't front on these unapproved roads until they're approved to city standards.
And Adam remembers this. This was back when Adam was the,
Yeah.
were you planning director
Yeah, I was
then?
planning director.
But I went to war with Bill Graham over N Street.
Yeah.
There was a client of mine that wanted to build there and come into the city, and he was touching the city, but I mean, he would have had to do curb and gutter road. I think we estimated it out at $185,000 for him to put the road in front of one single house, which just didn't. So he's in the county. I mean, he lives right there, but he's in the county.
He did septic as well about.
Yep, he did.
He didn't have to.
Is this discussion in response to my request that we understand this better? Well, I'll continue to ask questions then. One of the things I think I heard in our last meeting relative to Church Street and Apple Lane was that a property owner could force the city to build a road. Did I not hear that?
No, the city doesn't build the roads. Normally, the developers or homeowners build them to city standards and then dedicate them to the city.
Right, but we had said something to the effect that in this instance, the person that was asking for the rezoning, there was some methodology by which he could cause there to be. Yeah, I heard that sitting here.
So I think it was stated by one of the public speakers and it was uncorrected after they said it.
No, not one of them.
Oh, well, we don't
No.
build roads and we can't be forced to build a paper road either.
Okay.
We are often asked to do so and we deny it.
I think where you're going with that is, because I went into that meeting not so firmly educated on the whole idea here, and I wasn't necessarily, I was ready to vote it down. And the reason I didn't is because what I said was the developer, because the concerns from the neighborhood seem to be about putting traffic into the neighborhood. And I said, because there's a right of way there that exists, the paper road, the developer could build the road, turn around and dedicate it to the city. But that would also encroach on the adjacent property owners. So it would be taking their yard. He has the right to do that and then thus put traffic into the neighborhood. And that was my concern. But if he left that one piece and it all became commercial, not only does he have the commercial R1 buffer, but then you've got an additional buffer, i.e. the paper road, on top of that buffer. And that's what made it a little more palatable to me, yeah.
So, Ms. Kim, please.
Maybe this isn't feasible, but it seems to me that if we've got this many paper roads in the city, we need to get them off of these documents before we go any further. We can't.
Well, it's not incumbent upon the city to get rid of them. There has to be an action to abandon each one of them, which is incredibly costly. You've seen Davis and Abnett come in a couple times for, there was an alley off of Pinewood Circle, and there was an alley or an unbuilt road next to Pizza Inn, between Pizza Inn and Popeyes. I don't have any idea how much it costs those property owners to do the abandonment procedure, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of expense to do each one. There are state laws that have to be filed. And basically what happens is when it is abandoned, it is split evenly between the property owners on either side. So the paper road then would be given to either side. It is impractical for the city to be the architect of that abandonment. It would be great if property owners on either side would take the necessary action to do that, but it is a very expensive process. And so that's why there's so many on the books. Also, in cases like, can you go back to the Apple Lane? They cannot abandon that alley, the Apple Lane that goes through there, because otherwise you'd be creating landlocked parcels with no way ingress or egress.
And that's the case with a lot of the ones that we have examples of, is it could be taking away the frontage and the access.
The other thing is we don't have standing. We're not an owner. We're not an owner. We don't have standing to bring the action.
All right.
So
And
can you show me on this map where the Rainbow property is?
The owner.
it's to your,
It's the bottom right, the bottom right.
right below the red. No, it's over
No,
further.
No.
Go to
Hers
this
is on
one. It's
Church
on
Street.
Church.
Hers faces Church Street. Where's Church Street?
It's right underneath
is
the
my
alley.
question.
It's right underneath the alley, right there. Yep.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
that's hers.
And the Hickman home then would be,
Below that. Well, I'm sorry.
All three of those properties are Hickman properties all the way down to the curb. And then you got Mr.
There's four. There's actually five. There's Carolyn, Rogers, Jackson, Hickman, Carolyn, Rogers, Jackson, Hickman, Tally, Edna, Hickman.
they're all the
Tally,
same.
Edna, Hickman,
Yeah,
and Deborah Hickman.
they're all one family.
Yeah, they're all on the, and then the Deborah Hickman has some on Apple Lane.
These
Okay.
things have existed for decades in most cases, and sometimes they're created by courts as part of probate settlements. A lot of times we'll get non-conforming lots to be created by courts to divide up family property, and they'll create either a landlocked parcel or they'll create easements that are quasi-legal, or they'll create these paper roads to access parts that otherwise could not be accessed. And that's done as a function of court, and it isn't done so much now as it used to be. But there was an era where you'd have a big piece of family land. They couldn't make up their mind how they were going to divide it. So the court would just say, all right, here, and here. And then you either have landlocked parcels or you've got these paper roads to access them. And there's another one. I should have talked about this one, Mary Catherine, to put in the PowerPoint. We have one subdivision that it comes to mind. Actually, I can think of two that have paper roads in them that are fairly recent creations. One is in Country Manor on 4 Mile Road. The way they phased that property, they created a final phase of Country Manor with, I think, 6 lots. And to put those 6 lots in, they have to build a road that's, I don't know, a couple hundred feet long, and it goes through a little bit of wetlands. The expense of building that last piece of road outweighs any profit they could possibly make on those 6 lots. So it will be a paper road until the cost of the value of the land goes up to the point where it outweighs the cost of the road. And that one in particular is a problem because it negates some connectivity within that subdivision. So we don't create these anymore because we're much more careful, but that was created, I think probably 2005 or 6. And it just was a function of not paying enough attention to phasing in a subdivision.
I asked for us to have a workshop, but my concern didn't have much to do with paper road and more about this specific Apple Lane situation. What I wanted to learn is what our options were, what happens if this and if that. And so much was said about the paper road that I think some other things got lost in translation. I don't have a full understanding of what the property owner, the gentleman, Mr. McLean, I really don't know what his options are and how his various options would affect that specific neighborhood, the people who came, people who didn't come. And so I still have those questions. What I wanted to see, maybe on a smaller map, is exactly where his properties are, exactly which ones, and maybe you can show me on this, Mary Catherine, but not about paper roads in general. I generally know what they are, but about, I mean, there was a good bit of discussion about if he turned it into something else, it could go this way. If he did something else, it could go another way. That's what I was interested in learning, not just a general discussion on what a paper road is. So, no, that's okay. No. And I don't say that, I don't mean to say that like I'm criticizing you, but I'm just clarifying that, or I want to just clarify that I wanted to understand exactly what the options were relative to Church Street and Apple Lane, as opposed to generally about paper roads.
Right. These are the parcels, these 3, I know it's probably hard to see from here, that are already zoned highway commercial now. So he could develop those 3 commercially.
Okay, I wish they were, so what is that little square? Are those buildings?
It's a billboard.
That was a billboard.
That was a billboard,
That's
okay.
on now, right
Are
there.
there two of them, or is there any reason why?
It's just a shadow.
Okay, all right.
So these three could be developed commercially now.
Could you be a little bit more specific about where the three are?
Yes, that's the outline.
The entirety of that is already highway commercial. Okay.
Highway commercial.
All right, and those properties that he is now requesting, pardon me, to become highway commercial are where?
The ones he is requesting sort of wrap around the larger piece that's already highway commercial.
And that's why he said that what he was trying to do is incorporate into a plot.
He wants to all correct.
Right,
The
right.
problem now is he's got 9 parcels, he's getting 9 tax bills. So he would like to combine them into one property now. However, with the 2 different zonings, you can't create a parcel that's half commercial, half residential.
Right.
So he can't combine them now
Right.
into one larger one. So when he submitted the plating action to our office, that was our comment was, they could be combined at 2 different zoning districts. So in order to combine them, a rezoning request would need to be initiated. So with that, he requested the highway commercial zoning district for these back parcels so that they could be combined into this larger piece.
Okay, but essentially though, then all of his property would fall under the highway commercial designation.
If it were rezoned, if those parcels.
Right, that's his request.
And he's backing into the neighborhood.
Right, well, it was, what he would have is the commercial would be here. And then you'd have the paper road we just discussed, and then vacant parcels, but there are some houses here. So the commercial would be within the paper road over.
I am such a visual learner. I think one of the difficulties is, for example, you'll say there's a house here, but there's no house there. So the what appears to be wooded to the left of the red lines,
There's no homes here.
okay, but there are where?
There are homes here. This
Right,
is
right,
Alston
right.
Street, and there are some homes along Alston, but then there are some vacant properties behind Alston.
Okay, that belongs to him too,
Now,
or,
they belong to another gentleman.
okay, all right,
But
so,
if so they would
James
remain
Lee.
vacant because that's a paper road, you can't develop them.
They're
I mean, forever and ever, amen, right?
That's correct, unless he somehow worked around it, or if these, guys took over,
mhm.
and combined into their property, but that's correct. You either have to rebuild that road or reconfigure it somehow.
Does a paper road have specific dimensions?
They're all different. We looked at this one last time, and it's not wide enough to meet our ordinance now.
But how wide is that?
16 feet wide and
Six-
we require 50. But they vary.
Wow, 16 feet as opposed to 50. But that would be 16 feet, still, that is not improvable. You won't be able to,
For them to build a road there, they'd have to acquire more right of way and pave it to our city standards.
Or encroach upon their own property.
uh-huh,
And all of those lots are less than 1/10 of an acre.
They're already non-conforming.
I mean, they're non-conforming. You would never be able to build R1 on it
right,
as it is. So basically, you have a landowner who's paying city taxes on something that it's not worth the taxes that he's paying on. Right.
So you got Dr. Lee's lots,
where are they, William?
These
those
lots
that
right
are wooded.
Okay,
You've got the paper road.
here.
Then you've got an additional buffer that you'd be required to put in. And all of the access would be from Church Street. None of it would be back in that neighborhood. And that's, when I understood that, that's what changed it for me. Because several of the folks, the ladies that were here, were like, we don't want people coming through our neighborhood. And my concern was, well, as it stands now, he can build on that paper road. He can encroach on his R1 properties and build a road and access, if he wanted to, his commercial properties right now.
getting a lot closer to them,
Yeah,
yeah,
he could create a problem if he wanted to.
right.
And,
And, yeah, I think generally, they're concerned to be how a commercial business is, period. That you bring in businesses, you bring in people, you bring good folk, you bring all kinds. Not necessarily, I don't know. I mean, that's what I heard. Right, right. But I do understand it better. I won't say that I could pass the test on it right now.
For the,
Anybody
for,
else
for
have
the
any-
final reading, when it's on the agenda for the next meeting, we can have a better graphic to kind of show the buildings and,
Sure.
yeah.
I thought we were just talking about paper roads in general.
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. It was specific to this scenario. I just want to know what I'm voting for or against. Yeah. Too bad we can't. I mean, do we have to have second reading on
It was
Monday?
voted on for majority for the first reading. So it was
Understand
not,
that.
it was not tabled or deferred at the last, and you cannot reconsider it at this point. Because
Cannot
it's not on the
reconsider what?
agenda. You can't reconsider the vote that was the positive vote at the last meeting, at this meeting, because it's not on the agenda to do so.
I don't,
So there was a majority of council voted to
Sure.
pass first
right, we
reading.
passed first
There
reading.
wasn't a deferral motion or a table motion or a delay motion in any way. And it's not been requested by the applicant to do so. So to delay it from the next reading would be improper.
Well, I think there's some kind of way we can share that information with the council before we have to make a final vote. This new map, this visual. that gives
It'll be
us
in your
better
packet.
sense.
I can make sure we get.
Okay, all righty. Well, is there a motion to close the discussion on paper roads? Ms. Dance?
I make a motion, we close the discussion on paper roads.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second? Mr. Goldfinch?
I'll second with Tim's motion.
We have a seconded motion to close this discussion. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Moving forward, this is also a workshop for council to be able to provide input, individual input on goals for the fiscal year 2021. Just before we go into sessions concerning our budget, I'm going to start with, you mind, Mr. Hammond?
I don't mind.
I'll take notes, so.
And Mayor, I don't have a ton of input. I did speak with Brandon Harrelson, and I was really asking him questions about stormwater and flooding and mitigation and that kind of stuff. And it sounded like some of the things I wanted to talk about, he has on potential budget stuff, more preventative, that kind of thing. So preventative measures we can take so that we're making progress and not having to spend all of our money fixing
Sure.
that kind of thing. And then
But
the
your
other-
interest is that we are making sure we're
that's right.
looking into those things.
That's right. The and really the other thing was just, and this is for all of us, just to be very, very careful with our budget. I think everybody in here is pretty fiscally conservative, but we've got some uncertain times and uncertain amounts of money that are coming in, and I definitely don't want to put us in a situation where we're having to say no to things that we agree to. You never want to do that. But really, that's all the input I had.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Mr. Jordan. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan.
You bounced across the room. That's what you did.
Yeah.
You didn't go in order.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, real
That
quick.
wasn't a trick. I just,
Well, Alex covered me, so I'm good. So
okay,
we'll bounce back.
couple of dittos. Okay. Mr. Goldfinch.
Yeah. Pages and pages and pages. No, I got one of my answers. I got one of my questions answered. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about the federal minimum wage going up and, you know, on a step basis, and doesn't look like that's going to happen at least this year. But, you know, my question was, you know, how would that impact it? You know, so obviously something we got a budget for, and it looks like we've got 33 part-time and 25 full-time employees that would be impacted by that. So that's good information. And I think that works for me now, unless that were to
look like that's something that we need to plan for. If that were the case, I was going to ask staff to say, all right, well, if it goes up to 1150 this year, what does that number look like? But I don't think you need to waste your time on that yet, because it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
You know, can I ask a question just in the
yeah,
middle of
sure.
yours? I'm so sorry. The least paid employee with the city, I believe, is $10 an hour. It's $8. Is that for part-timers?
Part-timer here at the recreation center.
You know where I might have gotten $10 from?
Before we opened the recreation center, we had $10 for part-time, but once the rec center was open, it was approved for those part-times.
Sure, okay, all right, thank you.
And that's like high school kids doing
Right,
lifeguarding and
right,
stuff like that.
Yes,
I
okay,
think we brought it up at a couple different retreats to consider going to 10 for part-time.
Right.
But it's been stationary at 8.
yeah, and I'm not suggesting we do. I'm more concerned about adult employees,
Right.
and I thought that we had sort of a $10 minimum for pretty much across the board. Okay, thanks. Thank you, William.
Another, and there's no urgency on this, just this is out of curiosity. Breakdown of tax maps or the tax numbers. How many 6% properties do we have versus 4% properties? Just curious. And then really the only thing that I got is I just, to sort of piggyback on what's already been said is in previous years, we start with a number and we try to work it down and we throw things out and we get to a point where, we're not completely balanced, but we feel like we're close, so we can probably do it because some big permit fee is going to come in that gets us there, and it all works out in the end. And I would just sort of like to try and work towards a balanced budget, just to be on the safe side. And then finally, the only other thing I've got is, and I did so reluctantly, I voted to do this with you all earlier this year, but one thing to dip into your cookie jar for capital expenditures, a one-time expense. We dipped in to hire someone that we needed, granted, but that's an ongoing expense, and I'd really like us to be careful there. That can get tricky. So I think that's all I got.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Emmerich, would you mind, I should have mentioned earlier, I apologize. We're missing a council member who has a medical situation. Won't be able to come, but he had written down what he was going to present tonight. And I've asked Adam if he would please read those to us.
Absolutely.
Larry.
The first one he had on his list was to clean up the 378 corridor by removing dilapidated houses, patching the road and potholes, completing streets where they're not complete, and completing the sidewalk on 5th Avenue to Highway 501. The second on his list was Smith Jones. He would like to see us to complete the clearing of the property that fronts 378 that the city purchased, repair the swimming pool before the summer season is upon us, add a splash pad where the 9-foot section was destroyed, and have a meeting with the Smith Jones board to get some means of communication of their plans, etc. Next on his list is the median on 501 Business toward the beach. I think he might mean bypass. There's not a median on Business.
Yeah.
And that's a constant source of frustration for us as well. And Highway 701 South, there are potholes in the southbound lane that we will address with SCDOT without waiting for budget. So, and that's his list.
Thank you so much.
That's the question.
Absolutely.
Didn't we allocate money to clear the land at Smith Jones last year or the year before?
So we thinned it out. We left the trees, but we cleared out all the underbrush. I don't think we allocated any money. That was done by in-house, but we purchased the property 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And we'll have to decide if and when a clearing is appropriate.
Correct. There's a huge ditch that runs through it, so clearing it may not further us in any mission right now. So.
Right. May get us in trouble. Thank you so much. Mr. Hubbard.
I don't really have any pet projects, but I agree with Mr. Goldfinch that I'd like to stay within budget or under budget. I commend our department heads that last year, not knowing what was coming down the wire, everybody seemed to tighten their belt and had needs lists rather than wish lists, as I experienced before. I do want to say I'm very proud of our new building. I'd like to see it continue with our partnership with Coastal. And if y'all haven't seen the Barfield building that we bought, what Daryl's gone in there and done, everybody make it a point to go in there. It is beautiful in there.
Barfield
Where
building.
you talking about?
The one right beside City Hall.
I figured that's what you were talking about. I've never heard it called that
Oh,
before.
okay, yeah.
Is that the former owner?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good deal. Awesome.
But with that being said, we don't know what's coming down the wire, so let's all just try to keep it in focus.
Thanks, sir. Next time you know you're next.
Okay. I think that staff is to be commended for the last year because I believe they brought to the city a lot of really inexpensive projects that helped a lot downtown, such as the pumpkins and the lighting that we had. And, you know, when you can't do big things, it behooves us to do more little things. And I don't know if you all have any other magic in your wand, but I thought those worked really well. And I think we need to consider buying more pumpkins because the only criticism I heard from that was that it should go in more trees, et cetera.
We have 1,000 on order.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. And I don't know what other treats could go on at other times of the year, but I think it certainly brightened the scene and at a time when we needed a lot of positive things to take place, but it didn't really amount to a whole lot of money. So that was good.
May I comment? And I think everybody will feel good about it. The most frequent comment I heard about the pumpkins in the trees was, they made me happy. And it's a time when people weren't so very happy. So
Right.
just to.
I think our number one priority, and it's not just ours, we're on the periphery, but we of course have to continue to get COVID in place. We need to continue with mask ordinance and do the part that we can control to help things take place. I'm very concerned that our senior citizens are still not getting their needs met. While it's not a function of this city government to do COVID shots, I do think it's a function of city government to take care of the community. And I believe that we need to look a little closer into what we can do to help in those areas. I would like to see us put in the budget something for the extension of the Critter project. That won't be extended until such time as we get a new sculptress or sculptor, whichever, at Coastal. But we have to be ready to move if and when they put this back into place. I don't know if we might not want to consider expanding our public art into using this money in another way that maybe, I just hate to see us go on hold with public art. Coastal has done a little, they're adding to it with the alley downtown, but there's more things we can do as well. I'd like to see us add more signs at our entrances to the city. That's another thing that was done very cheaply and it doesn't look that way. Everybody thinks they look good. So 501, 701 south, 701 north. We've got plenty of places we can put those signs. And while we're sort of not in a real growth mode or building mode, I think it's the time to do these things. I don't seem to know what's happened with tennis lately. I do know that they've all given up on us and they don't really want to talk about it. So I do think if we have any magic wands to wave there. We need to take a second look at where we are and where we're going. I don't think we utilize our fountains like we should. If you go by the one at Collins Park frequently, it looks more like well, I don't know what it looks like. It doesn't look like a fountain because there's no water coming up. It's maybe a bubbler. That's all it is. And the purpose in that fountain was to create an interest for people coming into the city of Conway. And maybe one of our signs could be along, well, we got one on that part. We don't need another one there. But I just feel like that it doesn't do much good how much money can it cost to pump the water a little higher? Maybe a lot, I don't know, but somebody will have to tell me that. If so, we shouldn't have put it there in the first place. And we did, so we need to utilize it. I don't know what the shape is of the one for Gregory Martin at the downtown park. But I also think we need to start taking a look at what we are going to do in that lot back behind us when and if we build a new city hall. And to me, I see a spectacular fountain being in that square. And, now's the time to start planning. I think we should start putting up $50,000, $100,000 a year towards landscaping that block and I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about everything else because that's what people yell about. You're spending that much money on landscaping. If we can get that part dotted and out of the way, that'll be very much helpful, I think, as far as the citizens being receptive to it. I think we need to, I don't know how to do this. I'm just tossing it out there. I think we need to address the hanging oak downtown. There's a little piece of grass, the median, that's adjacent to it. And I think we need to plant a tree there that someday because that thing's gonna come down soon. I mean, it's not gonna last forever. I'm surprised it's lasted this long, to tell you the truth. And thanks to Wanda that it has, to tell you the truth. She's pumped it full of joy juice or something. I probably need some of that too. I mentioned this to Adam, but I'll mention it here too. I think we need to spray for bugs in Lakeside Cemetery, possibly in other places as well. I rode through there the other day and there's a lot of scale on the shrubbery. And once that takes over, it's gone. All these things are little things, but it's your maintenance. If you don't maintain, you don't have it. I'd like to see us take a look at lighting throughout the city. We lit downtown really well this year, and I was very pleased with all that. But I do think that there are a few spots that are still dark. And they may have a light within a certain distance or whatever, but a lot of it is to do with the shrubbery, the trees, the overhangs. If the light is not where it can come through the tree, you don't get any light on the other side of the tree. So I'd like to see somebody take a look at this and bring back to us some sort of proposal for things that we might could do to enhance that. I think that's probably the majority of mine.
All right, Ms. Timms, thank you so much. You're gonna think I read your list.
You didn't, because I just made it up.
You just made it up. I want to start with the Whittemore Elementary property. This is not a criticism. This is just what happened. We raised a lot of excitement about what could be, got people involved in helping us decide, and then nothing happened. Now, I absolutely understand all those factors that came into play, but if we don't do anything in the next year or two, we certainly need to have developed a plan for something. Had that been, I mean, if the building has to be raised, then we need to get rid of it. I think it's an attractive nuisance. We just need to have a plan for that area. We have excellent wayfinding signage. People compliment us on those all the time. We've made little progress on "You've arrived" signage, like Jean just said. Signage for "Welcome Conway, you've arrived.
Yeah.
You finally made it to God's land," that sort of thing. I hope we're going to continue to support the WES Foundation, the summer football camp that Everett Sands puts on. He brings coaches to work with kids for just a day, but I think it's really meaningful. Names they recognize from the NFL and from colleges. Marcus Latimer was a standout last year. I think it's important. Just for a couple of facts, SEDOT is the fourth largest road system in the United States, number one in fatalities. Here are SEDOT's goals for their roads: that interstate roads are improved to a point that they're 92% good, that major roads, I guess that means the 378s and 501s, improve to a point that they're 53% good. Farm to market roads, their goal is 40% good. And when it comes to neighborhood streets, if they get to 25%, they think they've done well. I mention that just to say that I understand that it's just something we need to think about and talk about over time. The value of owning roads, the importance of keeping them up, whether or not it's better to keep fighting and praying, or whether at some point some of them just need to be taken over. That's just a sort of general thing. I didn't have this one down until Ms. Timms mentioned the hanging oak tree. I wish we called it something else. The only vision that I get when I hear the hanging oak is people who look like me hanging in that tree. Just something to think about. When we increase our rates for a service, but we use that money to make improvements or extensions or expansions, I'd like to see us put up a sign saying this is your money at work. We're literally doing something that you can see with that money. I'm hoping, and I know we put in effort on 378, and I know we've tried to purchase properties that, we can't force anybody to sell us at market rates, but I just don't want us to give up on what could be on 378. If there is a way that we could gain ownership of the four corners of 378 and 9th Avenue and do some of the things that we've talked about, I believe that public investment does ignite private investment. And until we do something, I don't think anything else is going to happen. Fountains. I think there's one also at the water department. I haven't seen water in it in ages, but I did write that the Greg Martin water feature is so underwhelming. It's a shame. We could do something that's not cost prohibitive to make this better. Some time ago, we talked about the possible availability for us of an R.J. Corman disassembled depot. I don't know if we know much more about that now, but I don't want us to forget about that. I think it could find a very good place in Conway. Looked like that might not have been a financial budgeting issue. And I meant to preface my notes by saying a lot of these don't cost money, or any additional money. The city newsletter kind of starts and stops and sprouts and dies, and I think there's a lot of value in that. I think there's a lot of value, certainly for me, and I think there's value in it for the employees as well. Drones continue to be a part of our existence. I think it's only going to grow over time. I recognize fully that the FAA is the primary source for policy on drones, but we might want to consider some local policy to save our infrastructure assets, to limit noise and that kind of thing. Okay, this is all a brag. We have done so well with what's commonly called placemaking. Parks, gardens, alleys, and revitalization of the same. We have done such a wonderful job with the downtown, and I just hope we never stop. I think we've been thrifty. I think we've involved partners who make sense, and that's something I hope that we continue. Like Larry, we've already, I don't know that we've budgeted money, but we've talked about repairing the pool at Smith Jones. A lot of people rely on that pool, and installing a splash pad. I think it's a real good idea that he had to try to communicate with the board of that organization. It's been difficult at best, keeping anything going, working together, planning together. How many more years before we still have 25 years in that agreement?
For some reason, I'm thinking 2032 or 2035, somewhere in there.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've researched it, but something like that. So
Well,
at least another 10 or more years.
But that's better, because I mean, I remember when it was 30, so the time is passing. But I think every now and then, despite our past experiences, that we need to reach out and try to find some, I don't have a word, some way to attempt to work together. There's just such potential there. And the last thing I have, I think this is the last one, is I want us to be careful with our quality control. Excellence is not an act, it's a habit. And I've asked Adam to prepare some photos I took so that we can look at the results of a drainage project. I will say publicly that I live in this community. However, other people live in this community too, and they shouldn't be unnoticed just because the mayor happens to live on another street nearby. What I was told when I inquired about this project, leaving what you see here, if you'll just go from one to another, up and down the streets are craters and dips and ripples and places that hold water, and you get quite a bounce with your car as you're driving around. And the response that I got from the city was that we ran out of money. We misjudged the cost of the project. That is not excellence. That is not good work. That's shoddy work. And that doesn't speak well to us at all. It doesn't matter whether we did the drainage project or if we contracted it out. We have a responsibility to make sure these things are done better than this. And that is what's been left behind in Chicora, a struggling lower middle class community in our city. I think it's shameful. And I think before we move forward with who knows what else that might end up this way, that we finish up what we didn't do here. I invite anybody to come drive through about 20, 22 miles an hour. You'll have quite a ride. And I'm proud to say that there's only one on my street, one such cut, and it's at the very far other end of the block. So I'm probably least affected by it. Are there more? That's all? I thought you said I sent you 50.
That was 50.
That was 50? All right, anyway. So I'd like for us to finish what we started. and to do it in a way that doesn't go into, and the saddest thing of all is those roads had been repaved within the last 3 or 4 years before the drainage project cut it all up. And that's how it looks today. Takes away from the aesthetics, from the ease of movement. Maybe property values as well.
When we did that drainage project out there and we put these roads somewhat back, we don't have to add curb and gutter and do stuff like that.
We would never get any projects done if we had to curb and gutter. There would never be a project. The curb and gutter on these roads would be several millions of dollars. That would negate any chance of ever doing any sort of drainage project. This subdivision, I think, was built in 1964 or somewhere in that neighborhood.
I don't know.
Prior to any city standards.
The first home was inhabited, I understand, in 1969.
69, okay. So I don't know when the curb and gutter standards went in, but the reason for the curb and gutter standards is, number one, to help move water. Number two is for aesthetics. Number three is for, the quality of the road project itself, because the edges are concrete, the middle is asphalt, it holds it in better. Older neighborhoods like this that don't have curb and gutter, I mean, Laurel Street doesn't have curb and gutter, Elm Street doesn't have curb and gutter on the ends. It's the same, it's kind of throughout the city. The lack of curb and gutter, it hurts drainage flow. And it's, it makes projects like this, there's no edge to make a nice clean edge on it either. So I don't know if that answered your question, Ms. Tim.
Well, you sort of did, but I'm thinking it doesn't behoove us to keep doing more and more and more patch projects and not fix it like it ought
Well,
to be.
keep in mind, this project was a drainage project to fix flooding in the neighborhood. And what was budgeted for was patching of those cuts. It was cut patching, not resurfacing. We do have in the budget retreat agenda already an issue paper for the repaving of these streets, which would involve a 2-inch milling of the entire street and then a resurfacing of them. And that'll be something we present to you at budget retreat.
I don't know, if I known that, I wouldn't have brought it up.
We anticipate.
Good, I'm glad, because this is awful. All right, so that's all I have. Mr. Goldfinch.
On her last, talking about resurfacing streets, I guess Brandon I know just came on, but they'll go around the city, and Kevin will go around the city, and he would grade city streets 1 to 5. And I think a 1 is like horrible, and a 5, like a Brandon Street would be 5.
Yes.
And so is that the process?
Yes. Still the same process.
How we arrive at that?
Yep, still the same process. I can tell you, for instance, Carolina Forest Boulevard, as you enter from the commercial section into the community, it is destroyed. There's pothole. We can fix a pothole in there every week, and part of it is they overwater the median, so the asphalt stays wet constantly, and it's causing it to erode, and we can't fill the potholes.
I'm sorry, did you say Carolina Forest Boulevard?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Wild Wing Boulevard. Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, Wild Wing Boulevard.
Right, wait a minute.
Let me reset. Wild Wing Boulevard, between the commercial section and the community.
Yeah.
There's just a section that is completely destroyed that we really need to go in there and mill and resurface to get it secured. That would, I don't know that that's priority 1, but I know that was one that Kevin, before he retired, had on my priority list to bring forward. So I know that'll be on that list. And there'll be that grading that you mentioned will be in there as well.
Now, don't we also own the median on that?
No, and for for any sort of improved median like that, especially if it's an HOA improved median, the HOA either owns it or is required to maintain it as part of the thing, as part of their homeowners association dues. The road is ours, the median is theirs.
So they own the median.
Yes, that's correct. It's very pretty.
It is pretty, but if we were watering something to undermine their roads, they want us to stop.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going there.
Well, I think we've certainly heard from everyone. Unless there is anything related to the subjects we have here. Mr. Goldfinch,
It's a
please.
logical question.
Yes, please.
Ladies,
How much debt do we have outstanding? Any bonds or where are we at on that?
I don't have that number with me. I'm thinking it's like 6 million. maybe, but let me get back with you to make sure.
Yeah, no, but you think about 6. And do you know what we're paying to service that debt? No idea.
I can find out. I'll
Okay.
get with you.
Because if it's more than what we're earning on our CDs,
Right.
then thanks.
Makes sense. Anybody else? Ms. Sims?
This is not related to a specific goal, but I want to talk about the retreat a little bit. You have us ending at 5 o'clock on Friday,
That's correct.
so we're going to be hitting the road, Jack, and it's going to get dark on us.
We have an option for you to stay an extra night if you'd like. Just let me know.
Okay.
And we may be done sooner than 5 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Last call. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Goldfinch. Mr. Hubbard.
Second.
Properly seconded motion to adjourn this meeting. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. I don't know if this has been at all helpful to you. You can tell me.